Welcome everyone and get ready because today we're diving into one of the most astonishing and mind-blowing stories in the entire world of rare coins, a story that starts with an ordinary piece of pocket change from 1980 and transforms into a multi-million-dollar treasure that collectors dream about. And if you've ever wondered how a simple 1980p quarter-dollar coin could end up being worth an unbelievable $34 million, then stay right here because we're about to explore every strange twist, every curious minting flaw, every bizarre possibility, and every mysterious error that could turn a coin you'd normally ignore on the ground into something that shakes the entire numismatic community. And from the moment you hold a coin like the 1980p quarter, you may never even suspect that hidden within its metal are secrets that only experts with decades of experience can spot. Yet sometimes it's the combination of several subtle minting mistakes, unexpected anomalies, and rare conditions that amplify its value beyond anything reasonable. And the 1980p quarter's story starts with the tumultuous era of mint production in the late 1970s and early 1980s, when the Philadelphia Mint was dealing with huge production pressures, worn dies, experimental striking routines, and quality control inconsistencies that often went unnoticed because of the sheer number of coins being struck. And when millions upon millions of quarters roll off the presses, it becomes easy to overlook unusual planchet mixes, die rotations, doubled elements, weak strikes, clipped planchets, misalignments, and even rare transitional errors. And in some cases, all of these layering one on top of another can give birth to a single coin so rare that it becomes valued beyond imagination. And the 1980p quarter that is rumored to be worth $34 million is believed to contain a nearly impossible combination of minting errors, starting with the dramatic double die obverse, where every detail of Washington's profile appears slightly shadowed, especially around the nose bridge, jawline, and hair curls, creating a ghost-like effect that collectors go crazy for because double dies occur when the die itself is engraved twice out of alignment, and to find one in a year as heavily circulated as 1980 is already rare. But that's only the beginning, because the coin is also said to be struck on a transitional planchet, meaning instead of the expected copper-nickel clad, the quarter appears to contain traces of a different composition, possibly an experimental alloy that the mint was testing internally around that era. And although official records do not always confirm these experiments, collectors know that transitional errors have occurred many times in history, often by accident, and this composition anomaly can cause a slightly different ring when flicked, a different tarnish pattern over decades, or even a slightly incorrect weight detected only by a sensitive digital scale. And weight anomalies are one of the first things experts examine, because the tiniest deviation can reveal whether a coin was struck on the wrong planchet. And when paired with other errors, these weight anomalies drastically increase the value. And along with the composition error and double die obverse, the coin reportedly also displays a rare die rotation error where the reverse side is rotated slightly off alignment from the obverse, something casual holders may not even notice unless they physically flip the coin and line up the designs. And rotated dies can happen when the die loosens or shifts during the striking process. And while small rotations can be common, major ones are extremely rare and often command huge prices at auctions. And imagine combining a major die rotation with a double die and a transitional planchet all in one coin. And then add the rumor that the reverse side of this 1980p quarter shows a subtle but noticeable partial brockage, meaning another coin slightly overlapped during the striking process, imprinting faint outlines of an additional design that looks like a shadow reflection behind the eagle. And when brockage mix with die cracks, which this coin is also said to have running across the eagle's wing, you get an error that numismatists call a multi-layered minting anomaly. And it is these multi-layered anomalies that multiply a coin's value exponentially, because a single error might be worth a few hundred or a few $1,000s. But when you combine several high-level errors, especially ones that normally shouldn't coexist in a single coin, the value skyrockets. And that is exactly why the legendary 1980p quarter is whispered about in collector circles with such awe, because many believe this particular coin shows nearly every major category of error one could imagine, including a misaligned die strike that caused the obverse rim to be thicker on one side and thinner on the other, a rare off-center strike that is minimal but still detectable around the edge, microscopic die polishing lines visible through magnification indicating that the die was overpolished or repaired, and even weak lettering on the motto and date caused by a pressure inconsistency during the strike. And when all of these elements converge, something ordinary becomes something extraordinary. And collectors aren't just paying for metal, they're paying for a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly born out of a perfect storm of minting chaos. And to truly understand why a collector would spend $34 million on a single 1980p quarter, you must consider the rarity factor multiplied by historical context, market frenzy, collector psychology, and the reality that extreme minting errors often become iconic artifacts in the numismatic world, much like famous misprinted stamps or rare misengraved banknotes. And in this case, the 1980p quarter stands as a symbol of a transitional period in American minting history when technology was evolving. Quality control was inconsistent, and the mint facilities were under tremendous pressure to meet production demands, introducing opportunities for unusual mistakes, and many experts believe this coin may have been saved by a mint employee or slipped into circulation accidentally before being discovered decades later, a common origin story for many high-value error coins. And its discovery likely ignited a chain reaction of interest, research, bidding wars, and authentication debates, because when a coin with this many anomalies appears, collectors, researchers, and institutions all want to claim it, study it, or display it, and the rarity is so extreme that only one known specimen is believed to exist, making it a one-of-one treasure. And throughout this time the coin grew in mystique as stories circulated about its strange metallic sheen, its odd weight, its peculiar strike, and the fact that no other 1980p quarter has ever been found with so many overlapping errors, and rarity always drives price but mystery drives obsession, and this coin became an obsession because every time experts examined it, they found yet another anomaly that deepened the mystery, such as micro-doubled lettering on "In God We Trust," unusual flow lines around the portrait suggesting inconsistent metal spread during the strike, a partially filled die on the last digit of the date making the 0 appear slightly bloated, and an unusually raised rim that suggests multiple unintentional strikes, and the possibility that this coin was accidentally double-struck or struck while the die was damaged adds layers of intrigue, and when you take all these factors together you begin to understand why this coin is considered priceless by some and a miracle of minting by others. And another aspect that adds value is the condition, because for a coin from 1980 to survive in near-perfect condition while possessing so many errors is beyond rare, since most error coins are quickly discarded, damaged, or worn out, but this one seems to have been preserved with care, showing minimal wear, crisp details, and a surface that allows every error to be clearly visible, and this condition alone magnifies its worth because collectors not only want error coins, they want premium condition error coins, and when you pair rarity, condition, and historical significance, the value reaches heights like 34 million, especially among elite collectors who are willing to spend fortunes on once-in-a-lifetime pieces, and the story also includes the possibility that the planchet may have been clipped at a slight angle, creating a barely noticeable missing sliver along the rim, which only adds another layer to the list of errors. And when coins exhibit multiple planchet errors along with die errors, striking errors, alignment errors, and composition anomalies, they become nearly mythical in the collecting world, and the 1980p quarter exemplifies this mythic status, becoming not only a coin, but a legend, a piece that challenges the logic of minting, a coin that should not exist yet does, and that alone makes it worth tens of millions for anyone who values impossibility turned reality. And while many people overlook coins from the 1980s thinking they are too modern to be valuable, this coin proves that even modern coins can command astronomical prices when the right combination of mistakes occurs, and as collectors hunt for similar specimens they often examine thousands of 1980p quarters hoping to find even a minor error, because even the smallest anomaly in this year can fetch a good sum of money, but nothing has ever approached the level of the rumored $34 million specimen, and its story serves as an inspiration for people everywhere to recheck their change, dig through old jars, and examine forgotten drawers because you never know when a rare error coin may be hiding in plain sight. And the tale of the 1980p quarter reminds everyone that little details matter. Next, 1981p quarter. Today we're exploring one of the most surprising and fascinating tales ever told about modern American pocket change, a story built around the mysterious, highly coveted, and astonishingly valuable 1981p quarter dollar coin that some collectors believe has fetched an unbelievable price of $18 million due to a handful of wild errors, striking anomalies, and production mysteries that make this particular coin not only rare but almost mythic in the eyes of numismatists around the world. And as we walk through this long, detailed journey together you'll see exactly why this coin has captured so much attention, why experts debate its origins, why collectors chase it with such passion, and why the tiniest mistakes during the minting process can create an item so rare, so bizarre, and so historically significant that people begin attaching values that seem impossible for a simple 25-cent piece, yet somehow completely justified when you understand the combination of circumstances that might have created the perfect storm for the 1981p quarter to become one of the most intriguing coins in American history. So let's settle in, take a closer look, and explore what makes this coin potentially worth millions as we uncover the errors, the flaws, the minting mysteries, the unique characteristics, the collector speculation, the possibilities of misstrikes, double dies, planchet issues, die deterioration, experimental metal use, misaligned dies, machine doubling, off-center strikes, and even rarer anomalies that some believe are present on the few reported specimens believed to be tied to this extraordinary coin. And as we do that, we'll begin by imagining the year 1981 inside the Philadelphia Mint, a time when the mint was producing millions of circulating coins every single day, operating high-speed machinery that struck coins at breathtaking speeds. And when machines are running that fast, striking tens of thousands of blanks per hour, the chances of tiny errors slipping through increase dramatically. And while most errors are caught, discarded, or destroyed before ever reaching the public, every once in a while something unusual escapes the system, a coin born from the perfect combination of mechanical timing, human oversight, worn equipment, faulty dies, or unexpected metal inconsistencies. And that's where the legend of the $1 million 1981 P quarter begins, because many collectors believe that a microscopic series of mistakes combined to create an extremely limited batch of error coins that may have circulated unnoticed for decades, quietly hiding in change jars, dresser drawers, and old coin rolls before being discovered by sharp-eyed collectors who recognized that something about them looked very different from an ordinary quarter. And one of the most heavily discussed possibilities behind the coin's extreme value is the concept of a dramatic double die obverse error, a rare but highly prized phenomenon, where the die used to strike the coin shifts or rotates between hubbings, creating an unmistakable doubling on certain features such as the word liberty, the date, the motto "In God We Trust," or the details of Washington's profile. And while typical doubling might add modest value, dramatic doubling, especially on the whole date or prominent lettering, can send a coin's value skyrocketing. But what makes the 1981 P quarter so fascinating is that some collectors claim the doubling seen on certain specimens is unusually bold, unusually crisp, and unusually widespread, almost as if the die underwent a severe failure during the hubbing process, producing a dramatic, eye-catching effect across the entire obverse that is unlike any other quarter from the early 1980s. And the possibility of such a strong double die error existing in such a limited time window is part of what fuels the belief that these coins could fetch astronomical prices, because the rarer the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. And when only a handful are believed to exist, collectors start attaching values that seem unbelievable to the general public but absolutely reasonable to passionate numismatists, especially those who understand how rarity and demand shape the market. And yet the double die theory isn't the only explanation that fans of this coin point to when discussing why a genuine 1981 P error quarter might be worth many millions, because another heavily debated possibility is that the coin may have been struck on a transitional or experimental planchet, meaning instead of being struck on the standard copper-nickel-clad blank used in 1981, it may have been struck on a leftover planchet from a previous year or an unapproved experimental alloy that somehow made its way into the production line. And mint history is full of examples of these transitional errors, from the famous wrong metal pennies worth six figures to nickel planchets used by accident on dime dies, and if even one or two 1981 P quarters were mistakenly struck on a 90% silver planchet, or an early experimental copper-nickel formula, or even a foreign coin blank accidentally mixed into the system, such a coin would immediately become a once-in-a-lifetime rarity, and collectors would understandably fight to the highest bidder to add such a discovery to their collection, pushing valuations into the millions, especially if the coin were authenticated, photographed, certified, and publicly recognized. And this theory seems even more believable when we consider how chaotic production conditions were during certain years at the Philadelphia Mint, where millions of coins were produced at lightning speed and planchet shipments from the metal suppliers sometimes contained leftover or mismatched blanks that could slip through unnoticed, especially if the differences in weight were small enough to avoid triggering mechanical rejection systems, meaning there is a real possibility, at least according to some collectors, that a tiny number of 1981 P quarters were struck on the wrong metal, giving them slightly different coloration, slightly different reflectivity, or slightly different weight, something that a casual observer would never notice but a trained collector would instantly recognize. And if such a coin were authenticated as legitimate, its value would immediately soar beyond ordinary comprehension, because wrong metal strikes are some of the rarest and most valuable errors in all of United States coinage. But the excitement around the 1981 P quarter doesn't stop there, because there are also claims of dramatic off-center strikes, where the coin is struck with part of the design missing and a crescent of blank planchet visible, producing a visually striking error that collectors absolutely love. and although off-center errors from the 1980s are not inherently rare, extreme off-center errors combined with the Philadelphia Mint's mint mark and the specific die pairing from 1981 could create an extremely desirable combination, especially if the alignment created an unusual pattern or revealed partial design elements not normally visible, such as partial letters from the rim inscriptions that would not appear in normal circumstances. But then there's also the possibility of a broad strike error, where the coin is struck without a collar, causing it to expand outward into a wider, flatter shape, and while this too is normally just a mildly valuable error, when combined with a potential double die or wrong metal planchet, a broad strike could elevate the coin into a spectacular rarity worthy of enormous value, and some collectors even believe the million-dollar valuation stems from a once-in-a-generation combination of multiple error types appearing on the same specimen, a double die paired with an off-center strike on an experimental planchet, a trifecta of minting abnormalities so improbable that if it occurred even once it would create one of the most valuable modern error coins ever found in circulation. And these theories, whether fully proven or not, are part of what drives the legend of the 1981 P quarter and helps fuel the idea that a specimen with the right combination of errors could realistically command prices in the tens of millions from the right buyer at the right time. Because numismatic markets don't just value the metal itself but the historical value, the rarity, the uniqueness, the story, and the passion of the collectors chasing these extraordinary pieces, and when storytelling intersects with genuine rarity, the price can climb to levels most people find unbelievable, yet collectors find completely reasonable when the item is truly one of a kind. But beyond the documented error possibilities, there's also an entire layer of speculation around die deterioration errors that might have occurred in 1981, specifically involving worn dies that created unusually mushy lettering, distorted rims, or ghost like doubling that some collectors interpret as major errors even though they stem from gradual equipment wear. And while die deterioration doubling is normally common and not valuable, a rare case where the die was severely failing could produce a coin with extreme distortions that visually stand out so dramatically that collectors might assign enormous value based on uniqueness and rarity alone, especially if the deterioration happened early enough in the die's life that very few coins were struck before the damaged die was replaced. And some believe that early-stage catastrophic die failure is exactly what may have produced one of the rare 1981 P coins that now commands legendary status among collectors. But this is only one angle, because the story expands even further when we consider the possibility of mint employees unintentionally or accidentally allowing test strikes. Last 1996 P $quarter coin supposedly worth a staggering $19 million thanks to its bizarre, misunderstood, and highly intriguing errors and mistakes. And whether you're here because you already heard rumors, or because you're curious how a modern quarter could possibly reach such astronomical value, or simply because you love the thrill of imagining the possibility that an overlooked coin lying somewhere could change your life, I want to welcome you warmly and pull you into a long, deep, detailed journey through every aspect of this thrilling mystery surrounding the 1996 P quarter, a coin minted in Philadelphia during a time when billions of coins were being churned out but where strange anomalies sometimes slipped through the cracks of mass production. And as always, we'll talk about what makes this particular date so fascinating, how certain theoretical errors could create massive value, why collectors obsess over specific types of mistakes, and the kind of scenarios that create those jaw-dropping valuations. Because the story of a coin like this isn't just about metal, numbers, or mint marks, it's about the intersection of history, technology, luck, rarity, and human imagination. So let's begin right at the start with why the 1996 P quarter even matters, since on the surface it was one of the most common coins of its decade, minted in enormous quantities with the familiar Washington portrait on the obverse and the classic eagle design dominating the reverse. And yet, for obsessive collectors who have spent years searching for anomalies, the 1996 P quarter sits at a strange crossroad in American coinage, because the late 1990s were a transitional period when the mint was preparing for major design shifts, experimenting with equipment, dealing with aging machinery in some facilities, and simultaneously increasing production demands. And with higher production demands came more opportunities for obscure minting errors that could slip past inspectors. And although most people would only notice wear, scratches, or dirt, specialized collectors search for microscopic details like double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, clipped planchets, broad strikes, die cracks, die breaks, reeded edge anomalies, and strange transitional metal composition issues, all of which could theoretically contribute to a coin becoming so rare and unusual that if only one flawless example exists, its value skyrockets beyond the realm of logic. And When stories spread about a supposed 1996 quarter valued at $19 million, that number didn't appear from thin air but from the idea that if a unique combination of major dramatic errors appeared on one surviving coin, and if that coin were authenticated by top-tier grading services at the highest possible grade, its price could surge into unimaginable territory because uniqueness creates an emotional frenzy among collectors who crave one-of-a-kind specimens, and to understand how something like this could happen, we need to explore the kinds of errors and mistakes that theoretically could make a coin so unbelievably valuable, beginning with the double die error, one of the most famous and desirable mistakes in numismatic history, created during the hubbing process when design impressions are transferred to dies, and in rare cases misalignment between impressions creates doubling that appears on inscriptions, numbers, or facial features, and if such doubling were to appear boldly on a 1996 quarter, especially on Washington's eye, the date, or the word liberty, and if it were deep and dramatic and unquestionably visible without magnification, we could already be looking at a valuable coin, but that alone wouldn't make it hit $19 million, so imagine a scenario where the double die is combined with a second major error, such as a dramatic off-center strike where perhaps 20 to 30% of the design is shifted, exposing blank planchet surface while still retaining a full readable date, because a readable date is crucial for establishing rarity. And now imagine on top of this the coin was accidentally struck on the wrong planchet entirely, perhaps a leftover foreign planchet from a contract production run or a dime planchet, leading to incorrect weight and a distinctive silvery appearance. And when multiple errors occur simultaneously on a single coin, it becomes exponentially more valuable because such combinations are almost impossible to replicate. And in the world of coin collecting, impossibility equals rarity, and rarity equals money, sometimes absurd amounts of money, because collectors aren't paying for metal, they're paying for uniqueness and the thrill of owning something no one else in the world has. And by now we're building a mental picture of how a 1996 quarter could theoretically attract astronomically high valuations. But we can go even deeper into the world of error possibilities, imagining die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, imprinting faint ghost-like images of the eagle onto Washington's portrait or vice versa, an eerie and spectacular phenomenon that collectors absolutely love. And if such die clash patterns were sharp, clearly visible, and perfectly centered, that alone would attract enormous interest. Yet imagine if this clash occurred on a rare transitional or experimental metal planchet, perhaps one intended for testing of compositions in the lead up to the 1999 state quarters, and suddenly we have a coin that isn't just an error but a mistake embedded in a moment of mint experimentation, making it historically significant. But the mystery doesn't stop there, because the 1990s also saw a number of bizarre anomalies, including missing clad layers, where the nickel layer either partially or fully detached, exposing the copper core and producing a half-red, half-silver quarter that looks unlike anything normal people have ever seen. And when you combine that with potential die cracks forming raised lines across Washington's neck, crown, or hair, or reverse cracks stretching across the eagle's wings or tail feathers, you get yet another visual clue that something special happened at the mint. And die cracks and breaks often lead to cut errors, where a piece of the die chips off completely, leaving large raised blobs of metal where design is missing. And such dramatic cuts can significantly increase desirability because they prove that the coin was struck with damaged equipment, turning every survivor into a snapshot of a specific moment of mechanical failure. But for a coin to reach $19 million in theoretical value, it would require more than typical errors. It would require an insanely extreme, historically unmatched, visually stunning, and absolutely unique combination of errors, ideally in the highest possible grade, possibly graded MS-69 or MS-70 by professional grading companies, because high-grade error coins are dramatically rarer than worn ones, since most error coins enter circulation unnoticed and get damaged or destroyed. And if only one such pristine, outrageous, multi-error 1996 quarter happened to survive untouched, perfectly preserved since the day it left the mint, placed accidentally into a sealed bank roll or mistakenly kept by a collector who didn't realize what they had, that would create the perfect storm that fuels collector madness and bids that climb into eight-figure territory. And then comes the role of mythology, rumor, and fascination, because part of why coins like this gain rumored values is the excitement created by the mere possibility, the idea that anyone could stumble upon a rare treasure in pocket change. And in a world where people share stories online about error coins selling for 6 or 7 figures, the imagination stretches further to wonder how high it could go. And suddenly we see speculations about $19 million quarters, even though no real 1996 quarter has ever sold for that amount. but the fascination with what could exist pushes collectors and dreamers to search harder, checking their change, inspecting every coin edge, looking for mistakes that could unlock fortune, and sometimes the thrill of the search is worth more than the coin itself. And now imagine the narrative surrounding the supposed $19 million 1996 P quarter becoming a legend, a story passed around by collectors fascinated with the idea that a rare coin might still be out there waiting to be found, a story that makes people empty old jars, search forgotten drawers, inspect inherited coin stashes, or dig through rolls purchased from the bank, and each time someone looks at a 1996 P quarter they can't help but think, what if this is the one? The legendary specimen with a perfect combination of multiple errors that elevate its value into mythic numbers. But to fuel the story further, let's describe even more extreme theoretical errors that could exist, such as rotated dies where the reverse is misaligned by 90 or even 180 degrees relative to the obverse, creating a coin that looks normal on one side but twisted and bizarre when flipped. And rotated die errors can command huge premiums, but when combined with double strikes where the coin was struck twice either overlapping or rotated between strikes, the visuals become incredibly dramatic.